The maid kissed the Count to distract the guards, unaware his wife watched from behind the door. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The corridors of Santa Maria Palace were quiet as a held breath. The candles flickered low, throwing thin shadows across the marble floors. Somewhere far away, a clock struck 11. Lucía Morales stopped beside the servants' staircase and pressed her hand against her chest. She could feel her heart beating faster than the hour. "You know what you must do," whispered Isabel, her friend and fellow maid, clutching her arm. "Captain Ruiz waits below. Once the guards are gone, I'll open the gate." Lucía nodded, though her throat had gone dry. "If I fail, he dies. My brother would never forgive me." "Your brother died for justice," Isabel murmured. "Don't do the same." Lucía forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. "It isn't justice I fear, it's him." No one in the palace dared speak the Count's name without trembling. Alejandro de Santa Maria, the lord of the estate, the man who had once fought for the crown and returned with a medal on his chest and a scar across his mind. Some said he had no soul left, that war had burned it to ash, but Lucía had seen something different once when she had carried wine to his study. The loneliness behind his eyes. She pushed the thought away and straightened her plain grey dress. "When I signal, be ready," she whispered. Then she took a deep breath and began to walk toward the east wing. The sound of her steps echoed faintly. Each corridor seemed longer than the last. Every shadow looked like an accusation. She reached the tall wooden door that led to the library, the one that overlooked the guard's post. Her hand trembled as she turned the handle. Inside, the air smelled of parchment and dust. A single candle burned on the table beside the window. Books lined the walls in ordered silence, and near the window, reading by the dim light, stood the Count himself. Lucía froze. She had not expected him to be there. The plan had been to cross unseen, to draw the guards' attention elsewhere, not to walk into the lion's den. Alejandro raised his head slowly, sensing her presence. His voice, low and calm, filled the room. "Who goes there?" Lucía lowered her gaze, curtsying awkwardly. "Forgive me, my lord. I was told to bring wine for your table." "At this hour?" His tone carried the weight of suspicion. "Who sent you?" She hesitated, searching for a lie that would hold. "The steward, my lord. He said you had returned late from the governor's council." The Count's gaze did not soften. He stepped closer, his tall frame casting a shadow that swallowed hers. "The steward knows better than to disturb me after 10. Tell me the truth." Lucía felt her pulse in her throat. One wrong word and the plan would collapse. She swallowed hard. I lost my way, sir. I meant to reach the servants' quarters." "Then you have chosen the longest route possible," he said. "The east wing is forbidden after dark. Even the guards keep their distance. Why are you here, girl?" She looked up then, desperate, and saw that his eyes were not cruel, only weary. Something within her faltered. For a heartbeat, she wanted to confess everything, but that would mean Captain Ruiz's death, and her brother's promise broken. The Count took another step, close enough that she could smell the faint trace of tobacco on his coat. "Answer me." Lucía did not think. She acted. In one motion, she reached up, caught his sleeve and kissed him. The world stopped. The candle wavered, throwing light against the shelves. His hand, raised to demand an answer, remained suspended in the air. Her lips barely touched his, trembling, afraid. It was a kiss without passion, without thought, only the desperate courage of a woman who had nothing left to lose. For a moment, he did not move. Then his breath caught, sharp as a sword drawn too quickly. "What are you doing?" he whispered, more in wonder than in anger. Lucía stepped back, her face burning. "Forgive me, my lord. I lost my senses. I meant no—" The door creaked. Somewhere behind them, a faint gasp broke the silence. Neither of them turned. The Count's eyes were on her, searching for truth. Her eyes were on the floor, filled with terror. He spoke again, his voice quieter now. "Who sent you to me?" "No one," she said. "I swear it." He exhaled, as though trying to decide whether to believe her. Outside the window, rain began to fall, slow and steady. "Leave," he said finally. "Go before I change my mind." She hesitated. "My lord, Go!" She turned and fled, her skirts brushing the floor, her footsteps swallowed by the thunder. Behind her, the Count remained still, staring at the door that had just closed. He lifted his hand to his lips as though the ghost of her touch still lingered there. Then he sat down heavily at the table, confusion shadowing his face. But they were not alone. From the small corridor that joined the library to the chapel, a narrow door stood ajar. Through that slit of darkness, Countess Elena had seen everything. She had returned earlier than expected from her evening visit, rain clinging to her shawl. She had heard voices, her husband's deep tone, and a woman's whisper. At first, she had thought little of it. Then she saw them. The sight froze her. The maid's plain dress, her husband's startled stillness, the intimacy of that moment. 1,000 thoughts tore through her mind at once. Betrayal, humiliation, rage. Yet when the kiss ended and the girl fled, Elena did not move. She stood in the shadows, her breath shallow, her heart cold. After a long silence, she closed the door softly and turned away. Her maid, Rosa, waited at the end of the corridor, holding a shawl and a candle. "My lady, is something wrong?" Eleanor's voice was steady, almost calm. "No, Rosa, nothing at all." But her eyes told another story. They walked back toward the chambers in silence, the candlelight trembling on the walls. Rosa dared a glance at her mistress. "You are pale, my lady. Should I call the physician?" "No? Perhaps some tea, then?" I said no. The maid fell silent. Eleanor paused by a window, watching the rain fall over the courtyard. Down below, 2 guards crossed the path, their lanterns glowing faintly in the dark. Somewhere in the distance, a carriage rattled over the cobblestones. Life in the palace continued as if nothing had happened. Only she knew that everything had changed. She remembered the girl, Lucía, yes, the quiet one who kept her eyes lowered. The Count had hired her himself 2 months earlier, saying she worked with unusual diligence. Eleanor had thought little of it. She had assumed, as noble women did, that servants were like furniture, useful, invisible, forgettable. But now that invisibility had become a weapon. Eleanor turned from the window. "Rosa," she said softly, "do you recall the maid with the dark hair who serves in the East Wing? The one who brings linens from the laundry?" "Yes, my lady." "I want her name." Rosa hesitated. "Lucía Morales, I believe." Eleanor repeated the name slowly, tasting it like a poison she meant to use. "Lucía." The candlelight caught her eyes, turning them into mirrors of gold and ice. "At sunrise," she said, "I want her name confirmed by every servant in this house." Rosa blinked. "My lady?" Eleanor's voice hardened, though it never rose. "You heard me. At sunrise, I want her name." The morning came grey and heavy with mist. Bells rang in the courtyard, calling the servants to their duties. Lucía rose before dawn, as always, but something in the air felt wrong. The corridors whispered. People spoke in half-sentences, glancing toward her and then away again. When she entered the kitchen, the chatter stopped. Pots clattered, water hissed, but no one looked at her. Isabel met her by the bread table, pale and tense. "Lucía," she whispered, "you must leave. Now." Lucía frowned. "Leave? Why?" "The Countess knows. Someone told her. She's asking for you by name." The world seemed to tilt. No one could have seen. She saw herself. Everyone's saying she watched you last night in the library. Isabel's voice broke into a whisper. "Lucía, please, go before she—" A sharp voice cut through the kitchen. "You there?" Both girls turned. At the doorway stood Rosa, the Countess's maid, her posture stiff, her expression triumphant. "The Countess requests the presence of Lucía Morales in the Great Hall. Immediately." Isabel caught Lucia's hand. "Don't go." "I must," Lucía murmured. "If I run, they'll call me guilty." Rosa's lips curved. "You are guilty already." Lucía followed her through the long passage. The hall smelled faintly of orange oil and incense. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, making the marble shine too bright to bear. The Countess sat at the head of the table, dressed in pale blue, her hands folded neatly before her. Her face was calm, her poise flawless. The Count sat opposite her, half hidden behind the newspaper, though the paper did not move for several seconds. Lucía stopped a few steps away and bowed. "You sent for me, my lady." Elena smiled faintly. "Indeed. It seems there has been confusion regarding your duties. I thought it best to clarify matters in person." Yes, my lady. Tell me, the Countess continued, her tone polite. Where were you last night? Lucía hesitated. She could feel the Count's eyes behind the newspaper, though he did not look up. In the servants' quarters, my lady. Eleanor's smile did not waver. Strange. One of the guards reports seeing a maid enter the east wing. He described a grey dress, a ribbon at the wrist. Yours, perhaps. Lucía clasped her hands to hide the trembling. Many wear grey, my lady. True, said Elena softly. Yet only one of them walks with a small limp from an old burn on the ankle. Shall I show you the report? The room was silent. Lucía felt the breath leave her chest. The Count lowered the newspaper. His gaze found hers. There was no anger in it, only an unreadable weariness. Eleanor leaned back in her chair. Tell me, Lucía, what took you there? Lucía swallowed hard. A mistake, my lady. I lost my way. The Countess tilted her head. And in losing your way, you found my husband. The question struck like a slap. Lucia's voice faltered. No, my lady, Eleanor stood. Enough. Her voice was soft, but every syllable carried iron. Do you think I am blind or a fool? You have been here 2 months, perhaps less, and already you wander where you please, speaking to those above your place. She turned toward the Count. Tell her, Alejandro. Tell her what happens to servants who forget their station. The Count's jaw tightened. That is enough, Elena. Enough? She echoed. A maid dares touch her master under this roof, and you call it enough. Lucia's knees went weak. My lord, I meant no harm. Please, let me explain. There is nothing to explain, Elena said. You will pack your things and leave by noon. I do not wish to see you again. The Count rose. Elena, she turned sharply toward him. You would defend her? Before your own wife? He hesitated. His lips parted, but no words came. Lucía stared at him, pleading for a single sign that he would deny the accusations, that he would defend the truth. But he said nothing. That silence was louder than any shout. Lucía bowed her head. Yes, my lady. Eleanor studied her, the faintest trace of satisfaction behind her calm expression. You are fortunate I show mercy. Others might have you turned over to the magistrate for impropriety. Lucía lifted her head. I am not afraid of truth, my lady. The Countess gave a small, cold laugh. Then you will have plenty of it outside these walls. Lucía curtsied, her eyes stinging, and turned to leave. As she reached the door, the Count spoke quietly. Lucía, she stopped, not daring to look back. Go with dignity, he said. She bit her lip, nodding once. As you command, my lord. Then she walked out, holding her head as high as she could manage. In the courtyard, the servants gathered, pretending to sweep or carry water. Isabel ran to her. Lucía, what did she say? That I am to go. No, she cannot. She can, Lucía said quietly. And she has. By afternoon, her small trunk stood beside the gate. The guards avoided her eyes. Even the old gardener, who had once shared bread with her, pretended not to see her pass. The sky hung low and grey, heavy with rain. The gate creaked open. She stepped beyond it, feeling the world shift beneath her feet. Behind her the great palace rose silent and proud, the windows glinting like cold eyes. Inside, Alejandro sat alone in his study, staring at the untouched cup of coffee on his desk. His steward, Vargas, stood nearby, waiting for orders. Has she gone? The Count asked at last. Yes, my lord, the Countess ordered it herself. The maid left before the rain began. Alejandro nodded slowly. Did she say anything? Only that she thanked the household for her time here. The Count's hand closed around the cup. Very well. See that she receives her wages for the month. Vargas hesitated. The Countess... Do as I say. The steward bowed and left. Alejandro leaned back in his chair, pressing his hands against his temples. The memory of that moment in the library refused to fade. The fear in her eyes, the tremor in her voice, the way she had fled without looking back. He wanted to convince himself it had been nothing, but nothing did not leave the taste of regret in a man's mouth. Outside, thunder rolled again. By evening, Eleanor entered without knocking. She closed the door behind her, her steps soft on the rug. You are quiet, my husband. Almost as though you mourn. He did not look at her. I do not mourn. No? Then perhaps you regret. Enough, Elena. She walked around his desk, her perfume faint, her expression unreadable. I wonder what she thought, that little maid of yours, when you said nothing to defend her. I almost pitied her." Alejandro's eyes met hers. "Do not play with what you do not understand." "I understand perfectly. You let her go because you fear scandal. You fear what people would say if they knew a servant dared touch the great Count of Santa Maria." He stood abruptly. "And you? You parade humiliation like a trophy. Is that what honor means to you?" Her smile was thin. "Honor? In this house? No, my dear, only appearances. And I will not have them stained." She turned toward the door. "The servants will forget her soon enough, but I advise you, be careful whom you pity. People might mistake it for love." The door closed behind her, leaving only silence. Days passed. The palace settled into uneasy routine. Lucia's name was whispered at first, then not at all. But the Count could not rid himself of the unease. Each evening he walked the halls alone, hearing echoes of that brief, impossible moment. In Seville the rain continued. Lucia found a small room above a tailor's shop near the river. The owner, Don Mateo, had known her father and offered her work-mending uniforms. It was humble labor, but honest. She kept her head down, speaking little, praying the palace would forget her. One morning, Isabel appeared at the shop, breathless from the climb. "Lucia." Lucia dropped the needle she was threading. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you. Things at the palace are strange. The Count hasn't left his study in days. The Countess dismissed 2 guards, those who were on duty that night." Lucia's hand stilled. "She's hiding something." "She's hiding her pride," Isabel said, "and she blames you still. Be careful, Lucia." "People talk. I have no reason to return," Lucia said quietly. "Let her keep her palace." Isabel shook her head. "I don't think it's that simple. There's a rumor. The prisoner you tried to help, Captain Ruiz, he's gone, released." Lucia looked up sharply. "Released? Who ordered it?" "No one knows. The papers say he was pardoned by a private decree. No signature." Lucia's breath caught. "The Count." Isabel's eyes widened. "Then he knows the truth." Lucia turned toward the window, watching the river shimmer under the weak sunlight. If Alejandro had freed Ruiz, then perhaps he knew more than he had ever admitted. Perhaps his silence had not been cowardice but protection. Still, she could not return. To step inside those walls again would be to invite ruin, yet destiny was already moving without her. Back in the palace, the Countess prepared for her annual charity gala, a spectacle that drew every notable name in Seville. "We shall remind them," she told Rosa as she examined the guest list, "that Santa Maria honor is unshaken." Rosa nodded obediently. "And the Count, my lady?" "He will attend," Elena said. "I have made sure of it." That night, as music filled the halls and laughter echoed under the chandeliers, Alejandro stood near the window, detached, his thoughts elsewhere. He had not spoken to his wife since their quarrel. Every toast, every dance felt like a lie. Elena moved among the guests with practiced grace, her smile polished, her voice light. But behind that mask, her mind worked relentlessly. She had heard whispers that the Count had paid a visit to the magistrate's office, that documents had disappeared from the records. She would find out why. The storm broke after midnight, thunder shaking the windows. Guests hurried to their carriages, cloaks drawn tight. Elena stood alone by the stairway, watching the rain. Rosa approached. "My lady, the Count has gone to his study." Elena's mouth curved. "Then the night ends as it began, with secrets." Meanwhile, far from the palace, Lucia closed the tailor's shop, listening to the rain against the roof. She lit a candle, whispering a prayer for her brother, for Captain Ruiz, and for the strange mercy that had freed him. She did not know that beyond those walls, the woman who had destroyed her was planning something far darker. The next morning, Rosa delivered a sealed note to a courier. The seal bore the crest of Santa Maria. "Take this to the river quarter," she instructed, "to the house of Don Mateo Morales." When the courier left, Rosa hesitated. "My lady, are you certain?" Elena smiled faintly. "Oh yes. If the girl thinks she can escape her sins, she will soon learn otherwise." That afternoon, Lucia received the letter. The wax was smudged, the paper damp from the rain. She opened it with trembling hands. The message was short. "Return to the palace. The Count wishes to see you. It concerns the prisoner. Come alone." Her heart pounded. Could it be real after everything? She stared at the seal again, the familiar crest. She thought of the Count's quiet eyes, his promise to do what was just. Hope, foolish and fragile, rose inside her. Isabel warned her not to go, but Lucía could not resist. As dusk fell, she wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and walked toward the palace gates. The guards let her pass without question. The corridors were dim, the air heavy with silence. She climbed the familiar staircase to the drawing room, where light flickered under the door. She entered slowly. The Count was not there. At the table stood Countess Elena, dressed in black, a small smile on her lips. "Welcome home, my dear," she said. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten us." Lucía froze. "Where is the Count?" "Occupied, but I am here in his stead. Do sit down." Lucía backed away. "Why did you bring me here?" Elena stepped closer, her voice calm, almost tender. "I only wish to understand what my husband saw in you that he never saw in me." Lucía shook her head. "You don't understand. There was nothing—" "Oh, but there was," Elena said softly. "I saw it with my own eyes." Lucía turned to flee. "Do not worry, my dear," Elena called after her. "Soon neither of us shall have him." The door opened behind her. A deep voice cut through the tension. "Elena." Lucía turned. The Count stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable, his eyes moving from one woman to the other. He took one step inside. The Count stood in the doorway, his presence drawing every breath from the room. Rain hammered the windows, and the candles flickered under the pressure of the wind. Elena turned first, her expression composed, but her voice sharp with alarm. "My husband," she said, forcing a thin smile. "How timely. We were just speaking of you." Lucía stepped back, her hands trembling. "My lord, I received your letter. I was told—" Alejandro's eyes darkened. "My letter?" "Yes," she whispered. "The seal bore your crest." He looked at Elena. "You sent it." Elena lifted her chin. "I did. Someone had to put an end to these secrets." Lucía looked from one to the other, her confusion turning to fear. "Why would you summon me under his name?" The Countess's tone softened, but only in appearance. "Because you would not have come otherwise. You have something that belongs to this house of the truth, and I intend to hear it." Alejandro stepped forward, his voice low. "That was cruel, Elena." She faced him with fire behind her calm. "Cruel? You call me cruel after what I saw that night? After the disgrace you brought into my home?" Lucía tried to speak, but the Count raised his hand. "Enough. This is not the time." But Elena pressed on. "No, Alejandro, this is exactly the time. You would rather keep your reputation intact than confront what is festering beneath it. I will not live in the shadow of your shame." Her words struck like blows. Lucía flinched at each one, unable to move or defend herself. Alejandro turned to Lucía, his voice gentler. "You should not have come. You're not safe here tonight." Lucia's breath caught. "I came because I believed you asked for me." "And you believed I would do that?" he said quietly. "After everything?" "I didn't know what to believe anymore." Elena folded her arms. "You hear her, my dear husband, so innocent, so confused. Tell me, does her trembling move you still?" "Enough!" The Count's voice filled the room, cutting through the thunder outside. "You've made your point, Elena. You've humiliated her once. Will it make you feel stronger to do it again?" The Countess's eyes glimmered with cold light. "I do not seek strength. I seek justice." "There is no justice in cruelty," he said. Her mouth curved in something between a smile and a wound. "Then perhaps you should have thought of that before allowing her lips to touch yours." Lucía turned away, her face pale. "Please," she murmured. "I do not wish to cause trouble. Let me go." "No," Elena said sharply. "You wanted to play the savior. Now face the cost of your heroics." Alejandro stepped between them. "You will not speak to her like that." Elena laughed quietly. "How noble. You protect her even now. Then tell me, Alejandro, what was she doing in the East Wing that night? Why did she seek you out?" He hesitated. Lucía watched him, praying for the truth. Finally, he said, "She came to warn me. About a prisoner held unjustly. She thought I would listen." The Countess blinked, caught off guard. "A prisoner?" "Yes," he said, his voice firm. "A man accused without proof. A man whose name you would not know. Captain Ruiz. Elena frowned. And what concern was that of a maid? Lucía found her courage. He was a friend of my brother. My brother died believing him innocent. I promised to help if ever I could. The Count nodded. She acted from loyalty, not deceit. And if you must blame someone, blame me for keeping her secret. Elena's composure faltered for the first time. You expect me to believe this? It is the truth, he said simply. Lucía added, I never meant for you to see us. I only meant to distract your guards long enough for the key to reach the cell. Elena stared between them, struggling to make sense of it. So all this, the whispering, the scandal, was because of some prisoner? Alejandro's eyes met hers. Because of justice. Something this house has long forgotten. The Countess's expression turned to stone. You speak of justice while betraying your vows? No vows were broken, he said quietly. Only illusions. Lucía stepped back, her voice barely audible. I should go. I never belonged here. He turned to her. Lucía. But Elena cut him off. Yes, go. You have done enough. Lucia's heart pounded. She turned and fled, her footsteps echoing through the corridor. Outside, the wind howled against the shutters. Alejandro faced his wife in silence. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said, You've built your life around appearances, Elena. I built mine around duty, but neither of us has built it on love. She met his gaze, her voice trembling for the first time. And now you speak of love with her. He did not answer, her eyes filled with fury. Then you are a fool, Alejandro. You will throw away everything for a servant girl's conscience. Perhaps, he said, but it would be the first honest thing I've done in years. She stared at him, her voice barely more than a whisper. You would ruin us both. He turned toward the door. No, you ruined us long ago, when you decided pride mattered more than truth. He left her standing there, the sound of rain swallowing the silence. Outside the palace, Lucía ran through the courtyard, her shawl clinging to her shoulders, the mud soaking her shoes. She did not stop until she reached the gate. The guard on duty looked at her in confusion but said nothing. By the time she reached the river quarter, dawn was already breaking, pale and cold. She collapsed on the steps of Don Mateo's shop, shaking from exhaustion and fear. When he found her there, he helped her inside, murmuring softly, Child, what have they done to you? Nothing that wasn't already done, she whispered. Days passed in uneasy silence. She avoided the city centre, knowing how quickly rumours spread. Isabel came once, bringing a loaf of bread and frightened news. The Count hasn't been seen in public, she said. And the Countess, she's furious. They say she's written to her cousin in Madrid to have him recalled to the court. Lucía frowned. Recalled? Why? To destroy him, I think. She means to have him stripped of his post. She blames you for everything. Lucia's heart sank. Then I must leave Seville. Where will you go? Anywhere the wind allows. But before she could make plans, fate intervened again. One afternoon, as she worked at the tailor's table, the door opened. A man stepped inside, tall and cloaked against the rain. His voice was familiar. Don Mateo. The tailor looked up. My lord. Lucía froze. She did not need to see his face to know. Alejandro pulled back his hood. His eyes found hers instantly. She rose, speechless. I had to see you, he said. Don Mateo cleared his throat. I'll leave you two alone. He vanished into the back room, leaving the candlelight flickering between them. Lucía clasped her hands. Why did you come here? If the Countess finds out, she already knows, he said. And she no longer has power over me. Lucía frowned. What do you mean? I've dismissed her household. She's gone to her family's estate near Madrid. I won't live another day bound by deceit. She stared at him. You risk everything for me? No, he said. For truth. For what should have been right from the start. Her voice trembled. What happened after I left that night? He sighed. The storm nearly destroyed the vineyard roofs. In the chaos, I freed Captain Ruiz myself. The accusations against him were false, forged by one of the governor's men. Your brother died protecting the only man who could expose the corruption. I owed him that freedom. Tears welled in her eyes. Then my brother did not die in vain. No, he said softly. He did not. She turned away, trying to hide her tears. You shouldn't be here. If anyone sees you... "I do not care who sees me," he said. "I only care that you know I am not the man they claim I am." She faced him, her eyes shining with both fear and hope. "And what am I to you, my lord? A mistake you wish to forgive?" He stepped closer. "You are the only thing I've not been able to forget." For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, the rain softened into a whisper. Lucía drew a shaky breath. "Even if that's true, what future could there be for us? You are a count. I am nothing. You are everything," he said quietly. "And titles mean little when the soul is empty." She shook her head. "The world will not forgive such a thing. Then let the world be wrong for once." She stared at him, torn between fear and the pull of something stronger. Before she could answer, the shop door burst open. Isabel rushed in, soaked and breathless. "Lucía, my lord, you must leave now. The Countess's carriage was seen on the road. She's coming back." Lucia's face went pale. "Here? She means to confront him. They say she carries documents that could ruin him before the court." Alejandro's eyes hardened. "Then she shall find me unafraid." "No," Lucía said quickly. "You mustn't face her in anger. That's what she wants, to make you fall." He turned to her, his voice calm. "And what do you want?" Her answer came as barely more than a whisper. "I want peace." He nodded. "Then that is what we will find." He reached for her hand. She hesitated, then let him take it. "Whatever happens," he said, "I will not let her destroy you." The door swung again, wind scattering the candles. In the frame stood Elena, her cloak dripping rain, her eyes blazing with fury and despair. "So this is where the great Count hides," she said, her voice shaking. "Among the gutter and the rags." Alejandro faced her without flinching. "You should not have come." "I had to see for myself," she said. "To see the woman for whom you've thrown away your name." Lucía tried to step back, but Elena's eyes pinned her in place. "You think you've won, don't you? You think his protection will save you." "Elena," the Count said quietly, "leave her out of this." "Leave her out?" She laughed bitterly. "She is the reason for all of it. The gossip, the shame, the whispers that follow me wherever I go. What am I to tell society that my husband fell in love with his maid?" He spoke evenly. "Tell them whatever you must. I will not lie to keep appearances alive." Her face twisted with disbelief. "And you would admit it?" "Yes," he said, "because truth, no matter how cruel, is cleaner than pride." For a long moment she simply stared at him. Then her voice broke. "You never loved me." He said nothing. Lucía looked away, wishing she could vanish into the rain. Elena took a step back, the fury draining from her face, leaving only exhaustion. "So be it," she said quietly. "You have made your choice, Alejandro. I hope she is worth the ruin that will follow." She turned and walked out into the storm, the sound of her carriage fading into the distance. Alejandro stood silent for a long time. Lucía reached toward him, her hand trembling. "What will you do now?" "End it properly," he said. "I will petition the church for annulment. She will be free, as will I." Lucia's breath caught. "And me." He looked at her with something close to tenderness. "You are already free. But if you let me, I will stand beside you in that freedom." For the first time she allowed herself to smile. "Then let us see if the world will permit it." Outside, thunder rolled once more, low and distant, as though the heavens themselves were deciding their fate. Rain had not ceased over Seville for 2 days. The sky hung low, the streets swollen with mud and silence. Inside Santa Maria Palace, candles burned through the morning, their smoke faintly veiling the marble walls. Alejandro stood before the tall window of his study, his reflection a ghost against the grey light. He had slept little. Words from the night before echoed in his head. Elena's accusations, Lucia's trembling plea, the truth he had finally spoken aloud. There was no turning back now. The path of duty had become a road toward honesty, and honesty demanded courage. When Vargas, his steward, entered the room, he bowed stiffly. "My lord, the Countess has sent word. She departs for Madrid before dusk." Alejandro nodded once. "Ensure she has everything she requires." Vargas hesitated. "My lord, shall I inform the staff?" "Yes. Tell them that from this day forward, the Countess and I will live apart. There will be no gossip tolerated in this house." Yes, my lord. When the steward withdrew, Alejandro let out a long breath. It was done. What had begun as a storm of jealousy would end in truth. But peace did not come easily, not until Lucía was safe again. He called for his horse and rode through the rain toward the river quarter. The streets were near empty, only a few carts passing under dripping awnings. The tailor's shop appeared through the fog, its shutters half closed. When he entered, the smell of wet cloth and candle wax filled the air. Lucía sat near the window, sewing in silence. When she saw him, the needle fell from her fingers. "My lord," she whispered, "you shouldn't have come. I told you last night," he said softly. "I will not hide any longer." She stood, her voice low. "The city already whispers. The Countess's carriage was seen leaving before dawn. They'll say she fled because of me." "Let them say it," he answered. "I've spent half my life defending a name. I care more for truth now than for reputation." Lucía shook her head. "Truth has a cost, my lord, and you will pay it more dearly than I." He stepped closer. "Then let me choose to pay it." For a moment, silence fell between them. Outside, the rain softened into a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Finally, she said, "What will you do now?" "I will send word to Madrid to the bishop. Our marriage will be dissolved quietly. Elena will not contest it. She's too proud to face public scandal." Lucia's eyes widened. "You would free her after all she has done?" "Yes," he said, "because hatred would make me her mirror, and I have lived long enough behind mirrors." She looked down at her hands. "And after that, I will rebuild what I can," he said simply. "Not the estate, myself." Lucía smiled faintly, though her voice trembled. "You speak as though redemption were as simple as rebuilding a house." He met her eyes. "It is not simple, but I would rather begin with honesty than end with regret." She turned to the window. The river shimmered beneath the grey clouds. "And me, my lord? What am I to do while you rebuild?" "You are free to choose your own path," he said. "But if you allow it, I will walk beside you." Her breath caught. "That sounds like a promise you cannot keep." "Then let it be a hope," he said quietly. "For now, hope is enough." Before she could answer, the door opened behind them. Isabel entered, her face pale from running. "Lucía, there are soldiers at the palace," she said breathlessly. "The governor himself has come. They say the count is to be questioned about the prisoner's escape." Lucía turned to Alejandro in alarm. "They mean Captain Ruiz." Alejandro nodded. "So it begins. You must not go," she said quickly. "If they take you—" He smiled faintly. "They won't. The truth protects its own, remember." She caught his arm. "Please wait until the storm passes." He shook his head gently. "The storm is already mine to face." Lucia's eyes filled with tears. "Then at least let me go with you." "No," he said firmly. "If they see you, they'll use you against me. I can't stay here and do nothing." He hesitated, then touched her hand. "Pray for me, then." "That will be enough." Without another word, he turned and left. The sound of his horse faded into the distance, swallowed by the rain. Lucía stood still for a long moment, her hand pressed against her heart. Isabel touched her arm gently. "He'll be all right," she said. "He's the Count." Lucía shook her head. "No. He's only a man who finally speaks the truth. And men like that are never safe." At the palace, Alejandro dismounted before the main steps. 2 soldiers waited under the portico, their uniforms damp, their faces unreadable. The governor, Don Esteban de Aranda, emerged from the doorway, his expression grave but not hostile. "Count Santa Maria," he said, "forgive this intrusion. I am instructed to ask about the prisoner Captain Ruiz." Alejandro met his gaze calmly. "Then ask. The records show he was transferred under your authority, though no document bears the official seal. Some believe he escaped. Others say you freed him." "I did," the Count said simply. "Because he was innocent." The governor raised an eyebrow. "You admit it openly. There is no shame in justice, Don Esteban, only in cowardice." A murmur passed among the soldiers. The governor regarded him for a long moment, then sighed. "I knew your father. He taught me to respect a man who speaks plainly. Still, the crown demands order. You understand what this could mean for your title." "I understand," Alejandro said. "Do what you must. I will not deny what I did." After a brief pause, the governor gestured to the soldiers. "No chains," he said quietly. "We will hear his statement formally. But there will be no arrest tonight. When the men withdrew, Don Esteban lowered his voice. You've made powerful enemies, my friend. The Countess's family among them. Leave Seville for a while until the dust settles. I will, Alejandro said, but not before I make things right. That night, thunder rolled again. The Count returned to the tailor's shop, drenched and weary but unbroken. Lucía ran to meet him as soon as he entered. You came back, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Did you doubt me? Every moment, she said. Until now. He removed his coat and sat by the fire. The governor knows everything. There will be no punishment. Captain Ruiz is free. The truth is written in record now. Lucía sat opposite him, her eyes searching his face. And the Countess? Gone, he said quietly. Her carriage reached the edge of the province by nightfall. Silence settled between them, but it was a softer silence than before. The storm outside began to ease, the wind dying into sighs. Lucía spoke after a while. What happens next? He looked into the fire. I will leave the city, perhaps travel north for a time, to the vineyards. When I return, I will not come as a man bound by duty, but as one who has earned his freedom. Lucia's voice trembled. And if I am still here, then I will find you, he said simply. She smiled, a small, uncertain smile that warmed the room more than the fire. You speak as though the world will forgive us, he met her gaze. The world forgets faster than it forgives, but hearts remember what they must. Hours passed quietly. The tailor returned, nodding approvingly at the calm between them. The rain is ending, he said. Perhaps tomorrow will bring sun. When morning came, light finally broke through the clouds. Alejandro prepared to leave, his horse saddled and waiting outside. Lucía walked with him to the gate. You will go alone? She asked. I must, he said. If I stay, they will use me as an example. Let them think I've vanished for good. She looked up at him, her voice unsteady. And if I never see you again? He touched her cheek gently. You will. When the vineyards bloom again, I will return. A tear slipped down her face, though she tried to smile. Then I shall wait for the spring. He leaned closer, his voice soft. Lucía, do you regret that night? She shook her head. No. Even if it cost me everything, it gave me courage. And it gave me freedom, he said. He mounted his horse, but before riding away, he looked down at her one last time. Keep your faith, he said. That's all I ask. She nodded, her hand pressed to her heart. Go with God, my lord. He rode into the dawn, his figure fading into the mist. Weeks passed, the rain gave way to sunlight. Life returned to Seville, though whispers of scandal lingered like faint perfume. Lucía continued her work at the tailor's shop, her days quiet, her nights filled with memories. She often walked by the river, watching the current carry leaves downstream, wondering where it might carry him. One afternoon, as she closed the shutters, Isabel appeared again, smiling for the first time in months. He's returned, she said breathlessly. The Count, he's come back. Lucía froze. When? This morning. He rode straight to the palace. They say he means to address the town council himself. Lucia's heart quickened. For what purpose? To restore the estate in his name and to clear yours. Lucía stared out the window, the sunlight bright in her eyes. Then he kept his promise. That night, thunder rolled far away, gentle now, only a memory of the storms they had endured. Lucía knelt by her bed, whispering a prayer of gratitude, not for her freedom, but for the courage it had taken to earn it. She did not know that at the same moment Alejandro stood before the chapel of his ancestors, head bowed, speaking words that only the saints would hear. Forgive what pride destroyed, he murmured, and bless what love restored. The storm outside faded into stillness. The city slept under clear skies for the first time in many months. Spring came to Seville like a breath of forgiveness. The river glittered again, the air alive with the scent of orange blossoms. Bells rang each morning, calling life back to the city that had slept too long under clouds. The Santa Maria Palace, once heavy with silence, opened its gates to light. Lucía stood at the edge of the courtyard, her hands clasped, her eyes lifted to the familiar walls. So many memories hid behind those stones, fear, humiliation, courage, and now she was returning not as a servant, but as a guest. Are you certain of this? Isabel asked beside her, adjusting the ribbon of her bonnet. Lucía smiled faintly. No, but I have waited long enough to stop being afraid. A carriage stopped at the gate. From it stepped Alejandro, dressed simply, without the gold of rank, only a plain coat and a quiet smile. His eyes found her instantly. "Lucia," he said, his voice warm, almost disbelieving. "You came." "I told you I would wait for the spring," she answered softly. He took a step closer. "And I told you I would return." For a moment neither spoke. The wind moved gently between them, carrying the faint sound of the city beyond the gates. Then he offered his hand. "Walk with me." She placed her fingers in his. "Is it true?" she asked as they passed under the archway. "The rumors that you spoke before the council?" "It is true," he said. "I told them everything, about Captain Ruiz, about the forged accusations, about the night you risked everything to save an innocent man. Your name is cleared in every record." Lucia stopped walking, overcome. "They believed you." "They did more than believe," he said. "They asked that I return to my seat as governor of the province." Her brow furrowed. "Will you accept?" He smiled slightly. "Only if you stand beside me." Lucia shook her head. "I am not made for power. Neither am I," he said. "But I am made for truth, and you have been its voice since the day we met." She looked down, fighting the tears that threatened to fall. "Alejandro, I am still a servant's daughter. The city will never let you forget it." He touched her chin gently, lifting her face toward him. "Let the city say what it will. I am done listening to its lies." She closed her eyes briefly. "And the Countess? Gone to Madrid. The bishop granted our separation. She will not return." Lucia's breath trembled. "So it is truly over." "Yes," he said softly, "and something new begins." They walked to the garden where the first blossoms of spring had opened. The air was filled with the hum of bees and the laughter of distant servants. Alejandro stopped near the fountain where they had once passed without speaking, back when fear ruled both their hearts. He turned to her. "Do you remember this place?" She nodded. "I brought water here every morning. You never looked at me." "I looked," he said, "but I did not see. I saw only what duty allowed me to see, and that blindness nearly destroyed us both." Lucia smiled. "Perhaps it saved us too. We might never have found courage otherwise." He took a slow breath. "Courage, yes. That is what I see in you still." Their silence was tender, not uneasy. The fountain murmured softly behind them. He reached into his coat and drew out a small velvet box. Lucia's eyes widened. "What is that?" He opened it. Inside lay a ring of gold, simple, with a single white stone that caught the sun. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "She wore it when she married my father. It is the only thing of hers I kept." Lucia shook her head in disbelief. "Alejandro," he took her hand, his voice steady but full of feeling. "Lucía Morales, I offer you nothing that wealth can buy. I offer only the peace I have searched for my entire life. Will you accept it?" She stared at him, tears filling her eyes. "You cannot mean to marry me." "I do," he said, "before God and before those who still believe in honor." She covered her mouth, unable to speak for a moment. "But the world can stand aside," he said firmly. "I have lived half my life in shadows, and I will not live another day without light." Lucia laughed softly through her tears. "Then yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly. "Then let the spring bear witness." At that moment the chapel bells began to ring across the city. Lucia looked up, smiling through her tears. "They sound like they're blessing us." "Perhaps they are," he said. The next days were a blur of quiet preparations. The wedding would be small, at the chapel within the palace grounds. The same servants who once whispered gossip now hurried with flowers and candles, their faces lit with warmth and curiosity. Isabel oversaw everything, smiling proudly each time she passed Lucia. "Who would have imagined this?" Isabel said, as they arranged the white ribbons along the pews. "The girl who once scrubbed these floors will walk down the aisle to marry the master himself." Lucia blushed. "Then perhaps I should wear my apron for old time's sake." Isabel laughed. "If you do, he'll still think you're the finest lady in Spain." By evening, the small chapel glowed with candlelight. The Count stood at the altar, waiting, his heart beating fast beneath his simple coat. No medal adorned him, no sword at his side, only the humility of a man made new. When Lucía entered, the room seemed to brighten. Her dress was modest, the fabric borrowed, but she carried herself with the quiet grace of someone who had earned every breath of this moment. Her eyes met his, and the world fell silent. The priest spoke softly, his words blending with the rustle of the wind outside. Alejandro took her hands in his. "With this promise," he said, "I give you all that I am, my past, my name, my heart." Lucía answered, her voice steady, "And I give you mine, not because I must, but because I choose to. I have known fear and shame, and they led me here, to courage, to forgiveness, to you." The priest smiled, his voice warm. "What God joins in truth, no tongue shall divide." When their vows were sealed, the small congregation broke into gentle applause. Alejandro drew her into his arms, their foreheads touching, their eyes full of joy that needed no words. Afterward, they walked through the garden, where lanterns hung between the trees and music drifted from the open hall. Servants and townsfolk alike gathered to celebrate, their laughter mingling with the hum of night insects. No one spoke of titles or scandal, only of love. Alejandro led Lucía to the edge of the fountain. "Do you remember what you told me once?" he asked. "That you feared nothing except him?" She smiled. "I did say that." "And now?" "Now I fear nothing at all," she said. He drew her close, his voice low. "Then my heart can finally rest." They danced there, slow and unhurried, the sound of water and music surrounding them. Every glance, every touch, carried the weight of years lost and found again. The moonlight touched her hair, and he thought no crown could shine brighter. When the guests drifted away, they remained in the quiet courtyard. The air was cool, scented with jasmine and rain. Lucía leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Do you think your mother would have approved?" she asked softly. He smiled. "She would have adored you. She believed a man's worth lay not in his name, but in the kindness he offered." "Then perhaps she sent you back to me," Lucía said. He kissed her hand. "Or perhaps you were meant to find me all along." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the city's distant hum. The palace that had once been their prison now felt alive again, rooms filled with laughter, doors no longer locked by fear. Lucía looked toward the chapel where the candles still burned. "Everything feels new," she murmured. "It is," he said. "We begin again, without ghosts." A light breeze passed through the garden, scattering petals across the stones. She lifted one between her fingers, smiling. "Even the flowers seem to know." He watched her, his voice tender. "You gave them back their color." Lucía turned to him, eyes bright with quiet wonder. "I thought love was something that broke people," she said. "But now I see it rebuilds them if they let it." He nodded. "It saves them." The church bells began to toll the hour. Lucía rose, holding out her hand. "Come. The night is ending." He stood, taking her hand as though it were the most sacred thing in the world. They walked together through the open archway, their steps slow and certain. Beyond the gate, dawn waited. The horizon burned softly with gold. Lucía paused, turning toward him. "Do you regret nothing?" "Only the years I spent blind," he said. "But they led me to you." She smiled, the kind of smile that seemed to draw light from the sun itself. "Then let's not waste another day." He brushed his thumb across her cheek, his voice a whisper. "No more days wasted." They crossed the courtyard as the first rays of sunlight touched the stones. The bells rang again, clear and joyful, their sound spreading through the city like a blessing. Children ran in the streets below, calling out the news that traveled faster than wind. The Count had married the Maid. But those who truly knew them smiled, because it was not scandal they saw, but redemption. At the river, the water gleamed like silver. Alejandro turned to Lucía. "This was where I first saw you after everything fell apart. You looked at me and saw something worth saving." She touched his arm gently. "I didn't see a count or a sinner. I saw a man who wanted to be free. And now? Now I see the man who is." He laughed softly. "Then it was worth it." Lucía stepped closer, her voice low. Every moment. They stood together as the sun rose fully above Seville, bathing the city in light. Around them the world moved on. Market bells, the call of vendors, the rustle of new day. But for that instant, there was only them, a maid and a count, no longer divided by duty or pride, only bound by the promise that had begun with a single, reckless kiss. He reached for her hand again. "Lucia de Santa Maria," he said with quiet reverence, as though tasting the name for the first time. She laughed softly. "That sounds like a miracle." "It is," he said. The bells rang one last time, echoing over the rooftops, carrying their sound across the river and through the open fields beyond. Lucia looked toward the horizon, her voice barely a whisper. "We are free." And together they walked into the morning light, their hearts certain, their past forgiven, their love finally whole. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.